Two experts in ICF.
Yeah.
Decades of experience. One podcast.
Yeah.
Two hosts with a lot to say.
Look, I cannot sit through a struggle. I gotta get up and hustle. I gotta push through the pain, cause really that's how you build muscle.
Welcome to the Build with ICF podcast with your hosts, Trevor Brown and Heather Herring Brown. Yep, they're a package deal. With over 20 years of ICF installation experience, Trevor can throw down some expertise on sales, marketing, and training. On the other side of the table sits Heather, aka the girl boss, and she's earned the title as the owner of an award-winning ICF construction company, a drafting and design company specializing in ICF. And the numbers? With a master's in accounting, she does that too. Sleeves up, boots on. This is the Build with ICF podcast.
I don't want nothing for free. I'm here to work. Been through the dirt. I've been through the dirt, yeah.
Hello. Ooh, I think I went in a little early there with the music still playing.
Oh, that's all right. I got her down. Got it under control.
Oh, it's good.
Episode 19.
19. We're almost to 20.
Almost
Wow.
to 20.
Crazy.
Shit's flying.
Oh.
Stuff's flying. Reverting to our other podcast.
I know, right? Oh my gosh. So this one's going to be a little bit different today because we're going to do something we have not done yet. You know, we tell everybody to send us their questions, DM us on Facebook or, many of our socials, send us emails, and they've been doing it.
Yeah, we've needed to do this. That's
Yes.
the problem. And so we're kind of behind. So I apologize if you've been sending in questions. I went back and I thought I was staying on top of it, but there were a few of these questions that came in a while back, and we got to get better about. I think we're going to do basically once a month. So once, we'll do every 4 episodes or whatever. We'll do a listener questions, I guess, or whatever.
Yeah, that's what I like that.
Listener questions, because we get a lot of DMs. I mean, it's awesome. I mean, we love our listeners reaching out, and whether it be through email or DMs. I've got to check too, because all the platforms have their own messaging system. So like sometimes it comes through on Spotify question, or it's crazy. So iTunes has their own. I mean, it's like there's all these different questions that you got to make sure you catch them, because they'll get buried. And
well, and there's 3 of us that get that email, and so sometimes we forget when we get in there, if we don't answer that right away, we look at it. We forget to mark it as unread so that somebody else sees it or whatever. So we apologize. So here we go.
Enough with the excuses.
Yeah. So be the solution, right?
Be the solution. Don't be a problem. Be a solution.
So we're going to do listener questions today.
So I'm kind of just going to go down the list in no exact order. I went and jotted down a bunch of them as we were going through the emails and DMs and stuff. So all of these, I'll give the huge disclaimer that I always give. These are opinions that from us. If you've reached out to us, you're asking us for our opinion. I don't need to get blown up by people that disagree with what we say. I'm happy to have that conversation with people, but do understand that all of these questions that we're answering, these are our own experience, our own personal opinions on them. And if you guys want to do the research, get after it. There's a lot of ways to do research out there. And you can always reach out to us and follow up with these questions too. If you think that we were off, I'm happy to bring that up on the next episode of listener questions and any corrections we get. So feel free to reach out. We love the interaction. So please do. First one that we've got multiple times, and a lot of these have actually been multiple questions. That's kind of how I maybe ranked them a little bit, because I was like, gosh, I got that question again. The first one I think that is super, super important is we did an episode on how to pick a block. But I get a lot of questions on how to pick a contractor.
Oh, this is a good one. So I talk about this, I think, from a generic standpoint, with regards to like fix and flips in a class that I teach, and talk about, how to find a contractor, how to qualify them, and how to verify that information so that, you're protecting yourself. And so I think that this is a really good question that is kind of all over throughout construction.
Right. And within ICF, and I think the buzzword that you hit there is verify. That's probably the biggest mistake I've seen over the years. When we see something, I literally just right before we recorded, I was on the phone with a contractor who is going in. He will be the 3rd contractor going into a job that got messed up to a point that they're tearing it down, and because they chose the wrong contractor. So he's going in now to do it right. But this is a very common occurrence. Unfortunately, it's something that I have personally battled, and everybody that's in the ICF industry has battled. There's heads nodding all over listening to this right now. If you're a sales guy in the industry or a distributor in the industry or an installer, I call it laying a turd in your backyard. It's basically somebody comes in and just puts a big turd job in your backyard, and it affects your business because people say, "Oh, I saw that ICF job and they had to tear it down." I mean, that's going to negatively affect the whole industry.
Or they saw the ICF job that, oh my God, that took them forever.
Right.
Like they were working on that. Yeah.
Stuff like that. So back to the verification. I think the most important thing you can do to the question of how to pick a contractor is get references and call their references. Call them and find out. And I'm not saying that you have to be perfect. We're not perfect. I mean, I've had jobs that have not gone as well as I want them to. Every contractor has. There's no perfect contractors out there. We have, jobs where, but if you can call three or four of their contacts and they say, "Oh yeah, I did an ICF house. We love our house. It's great." If you run into a contractor that's not willing to give you any phone numbers of people that they've stacked block for, don't use them. I mean, that's, and like I said,
or use at your own risk.
Yeah. Usually, I mean, that you're asking for it, or the typical, the thing that happens in ICF the same way it happens in every business and every facet of your life. If you get the cheapest bid, that's probably not the best one. And you got to be willing to accept that. I mean, and there's some people that says, I'm going to go buy an old beater truck because that's what I have in my budget and that's what I want to do. But you better be ready for that truck to break down. You better be ready for it to not be pretty and not sound great and it blows blue smoke or whatever. But you need to be aware enough to understand that you get what you pay for in everything in life. This is a bigger picture than ICF. And if you find the guy that's the cheapest quote and he comes in, especially if the guy comes in way under other quotes, it's a red flag. I mean, we are all in this industry. I talk to, installers all over the country, and we are all very much, excuse me, puberty. We are very much aligned. I am blown away at my conversations with guys that I've had, that I've been doing the same formula to figure out my man hours for 20 plus years now. And and it takes me 30 seconds to do it the way I do it. And usually I'm within a few hours of the guy that has a, 8-hour worksheet that he works up. Right. And so we all are very aligned. So when you see something that comes in way under the quote and you're like, that should be a red flag. So my big thing with that is do your research, do a little stalking on them, go to their website, go to their, and I get it. Like, I know there's some guys out there that, I'm not a Facebook guy. I'm not a Instagram guy. I'm not social media. I don't have a website. Okay. Then do it old school. Ask them for phone numbers and call their call their people and just say, "Hey, I'm looking at doing a job with, XYZ and I just wanted to know how your experience was with them." And all I ask is that you take that with a grain of salt too, because, it's pretty crazy how negativity goes a lot longer than farther than positivity. So a lot of times, you're going to hear some things maybe that isn't perfect. None of us are. So don't rule somebody out because you hear one bad thing or something didn't go great on a job. But if you get 2 out of 3 of them that said he did a good job, he's probably a pretty good contractor. Yeah. So,
and if you have the opportunity, I would say, a lot of homeowners, I know a lot of ours are like, well, come over and check it out. Come over and see the house. And if you get that opportunity, if you're able to do that, if you're able to go by an active job site, those are beneficial things for you to be able to see as a consumer, whether you're DIYer and you're just hiring somebody to stack it for you, or you're a general contractor looking to hire an ICF crew.
And another very simple thing that sounds dumb, but I've been guilty of this myself, is not Googling somebody. As simple as a Google, and you could find that they have millions of dollars in lawsuits pending in another state.
Here, let's back it up just a second with Googling. So number one, check your contractors. What some states don't have licensing, they have registration. Some don't have anything. But if your state has licensing or registration, check that board. double check it and just see, because you can see complaints that were against them. You can see if they're active. You can see how long they've been in business. If they're, you can check and make sure that, they're
the license is under their name.
Yes, that it's under their name, if that's who you're hiring or who your contact is going to be. So, double check that. You want to make sure that before they start, and general contractors know this, but a lot of homeowners don't, you want to make sure that you get an insurance certificate showing that they are insuring that job and they're listing you as an additional insured. Yep. So it's as simple as that. You want to make sure that you're getting and
that's free. It doesn't cost them anything.
Correct.
Every insurance agency, you can call and ask them for.
It may cost a little bit depending on how much they do, but it really is not that much. Yeah. And what you specifically want, which I've been a general contractor for 20 years, and I just had this happen for the very first time. The insurance company did not send me the disclosures. And I had a finish carpenter put a screw into a water line. And a year later, it created a leak because it took a little time to wear everything away in that water line and start leaking. Well, then his insurance says, oh, well, we don't cover, and I can't remember the exact term, if it was workmanship or something. And I'm like, what the hell is his insurance for if it does not cover him making a mistake? He couldn't see the water line there.
Yeah.
If it doesn't cover it, he doesn't cover his work, what is his insurance good for? So make sure you get those disclosures that come along with that insurance certificate.
Because there are, and honestly, that's a great example of why some guys are more expensive, right? We are not the cheapest installer out there when we do an install. And it's because we carry all the correct insurances. We have all the correct, registrations, and we do all the things that we need to do in our state or in bordering states. I mean, we're looking into going over and doing some work in Washington now. And so we're in the process of putting together our Washington license. So, you have to make sure they're legit. I mean, it's really easy to get we call them a chuck in a truck, yes. And that guy that has a truck and knows how to do it, and he's just doing it on the side, or he's a retired contractor. I hear that one all the time. Oh, this guy was a retired contractor. I trusted him. Do some Googling, get some referrals. That's pretty much it. I won't beat this one to death, but it's definitely
do your due diligence.
Do your due diligence, and don't just go for the cheapest one. Just do some due diligence. Ask around, do some Googling, make sure that they're not a wanted felon somewhere. The other one is just because they have a registration or license number printed on the side of their trailer or truck doesn't mean that it's valid. You do get that a lot. We have a friend that works in the licensing department, and she says that it's very common for people to go and get that number so they have it, and then they hold that the rest of their life. And sometimes when they do research, they haven't renewed or carried insurance for 20 years, but they still have it on the side of their truck. So just visually seeing an RC number or a license number or something from somebody, or I love how the people will advertise licensed and bonded, and just everybody goes, oh yeah, they're licensed and bonded. Why? Well, it said it on their van,
Yeah.
Double check it.
Yep.
Double check it.
Yeah. So I think the key here is trust, but verify.
Correct.
So, all right. Next question that we've got on the list here. How to fix problems once the concrete gets hard.
Yeah. This is one that makes my stomach turn because, like I said, everyone's had this happen, and I, maybe there's a perfect installer out there, and you can send me a message and let me know. It happens. I mean, it's concrete, it's a job site. Things, there's just so many different things that can go, I hate to say wrong, but just not the way you want them to. And there's going to be some different things that can happen with an ICF job. You can have pillowing, which is basically where the EPS between the webs kind of pillow out and belly out, and that's usually from over vibration and stuff like that. You can have just the most common is just a wall that's crooked. I mean, you have a wall that tilts out or tilts in or does something or it doesn't get corrected. I mean, I've had my own jobs where we know they were straight, we left, and I don't know what happened, but somehow the wall moved, and it just, even with alignment on it. So I mean, it happens. We're not perfect. Things do happen. How do you deal with it? And a lot of people say, well, that's the scary part about working with concrete. No, I mean, I can take you through every stick frame house, and there's walls that are, if we sit and put squares on everything and levels on everything, you try to basically adjust everything to a visual approval, essentially, is the best way I can put it. There's going to be times where you're going to have to do maybe a fur out here and there to straighten the wall, but a string line is your friend when you have a crooked wall or something that happens, or bows or bellies. Just getting it back, I mean, it's going to take more work. You just made more work, unfortunately, more cost.
Yeah, it's the same thing that when you do a traditional concrete basement, without
right.
ICF forms. Before I switched to ICF, I did a lot of basement homes on hillsides, and I can't. Not one of them was perfect. It's just not
right. You have to. You end up having to do something to adjust it,
and that's why there's standards and protocols out there, and NAHB has a really good book on what standards are and what's within a reasonable expectation for the job, which I think is super handy for consumers as well as contractors to have on their job site. We strive for perfection. Yeah. We strive to make it straight. It's super simple with ICF, really. I think it's a lot simpler with ICF. When it's out just a little bit, you've got a little bit of a bow because you can use you
can rasp off the foam. Like that. So to answer people's question, how do you fix it? If it's a belly out, on the belly outside, they make sheetrock. They make foam rasps that you can buy. I'll plug windlock.com again. They've got, a great selection of them, but you can get them on Amazon, anything like that. But it's basically a foam rasp. It's very common for roughing up to put EIFS on. So anywhere there's stucco, there's going to be any stucco crew has foam rasp. And the reason they have foam rasp is because on even stick frame houses or CMU or ICF, any of them, sometimes they got to rasp them down. They got to rasp the foam down to level it out and rough it up. And so it actually is not bad. I mean, they kind of look like a big trowel with rocks on the other side. I mean, they're pretty aggressive, but it basically knocks the foam down pretty fast. So you can move, take that down. Most all the blocks out there have a good, quarter to half inch of foam over the web. So you're not going to get into the polypropylene until, which will, usually take a lot of that bow out. Your other options are obviously just furring out. And sometimes what you may have to do, especially if you're doing siding, stucco's a little easier because stucco, they can foam out. They can make the stucco a little thicker in places to make it to really take out some of the wave. But with wood siding and stuff, we've had to deal with this, unfortunately, and you just basically have to do, pull a string line from corner to corner, find out where you're low and put some shims in there and basically run your siding over top of the shim. It's basically kind of like what, you see, if you see some of the Canadian stuff, it's basically a rain board. They basically put the drain board or whatever they want to call it back behind there. So it just pulls it away from the foam a little bit. And, that's basically how you end up fixing it in the trim side of things, whether that be on the interior, exterior, it just takes a little bit more time. So don't panic. The structure's strong. You still have a better house than any other stick frame house out there. And every stick frame house out there has issues too. So, I can take you through $10 million homes that, have issues in certain places. If you really go through things with a fine tooth comb, you're going to probably find something wrong. So, but to answer your question, once, if something does happen after the concrete's hardened, there's ways to fix it. It's usually having to do with either rasping or shimming. And then, even we've had windows put in the wrong place or wrong size. Call the concrete cutter. They come out and cut it. It's not game over. We can, it's not the end of the world. We don't have to tear the building down. Everything's fixable. Yep. Unless you have a structural problem in the home, it's fixable. I mean, just like I said, talking to the guy this morning, obviously there was so many things that were wrong and placed in the wrong place that it's just going to make sense to tear it down, or voids or different things like that. But
that's a good one to talk about too, because voids
can even be filled. Yeah. I mean,
voids can be filled.
Yeah. I mean, you get a void in that, usually they happen under windows is the most common place, but you get a void in there somewhere, something gets hung up in the wall, you didn't catch it in the pour. And some, you end up catching it either just through finding it, tapping on the wall or through a thermal gun or whatever. You find a void somewhere, you can cut that open and we can grout into that and fill that in with grout, or even a lot of cases, because the structural is still there. As long as it's not like the size of a Volkswagen, it can, you can actually just foam that. And so a lot of guys will put insulation foam in that and fill that void so that it's insulated and gives you some good insulation. It may not be as good as the thermal mass part, but yeah, I mean, it's not the end of the world. Everything's fixable. It's not ideal. It's not what you want to happen, but it's something that happens. And so, and again, happy to answer questions on that and stuff. You can usually reach out to your manufacturer. They usually have a pretty good technical department set up that there's usually a guy like me that's works for that company that has dealt with these technical issues all over, and they usually can advise you on how to take care of it. But
and a lot of times, a lot of the manufacturers have an FAQ page as well with a lot of this information on there. So
yeah, so pretty easy.
Yep.
Okay. Like I said, just going down the list here. How long should it take to install? question I've had from.
It depends.
It really does. And it's kind of a loaded question in some ways, but there's a rule of thumb. I would say that most installers that I've talked to agree with. This just came up on one of the Facebook pages not too long ago too, that I commented on. I think everybody pretty much agrees on a standard normal size house. I'm not talking like a 10,000, 15,000 square foot house. On a normal single family home, usually it's about a week per floor is what an install crew looks at. That's how we run our crews. Now, if you're a DIYer and this is your first job, then you're not probably going to do it in a week. I've seen it done. I mean, don't get me wrong. I've seen some go-getters that just come up and get it done. But in most cases, it's, for if you're hiring a crew, it's usually a week per floor, and then you've got a week to let it sit, and then your framer's going to roll in. So if you're doing a 2-story, you're going to do or basement, you're going to do the basement. They're going to leave it on for a week. Guys are going to come in, peel it in a day. The framer's going to come in there. They're going to put the second floor on. Boom, you're going to move up another week for that floor, plus a week to pull the alignment down. So, that's the way I would say to kind of figure if you have a crew doing it. If you're doing it yourself, give yourself time.
Yeah. I would say when you say a week, I would say like 7 business days, because if that's what we plan for our crew. They've got the setup, they've got the alignment, they've got, just double check and all of our checks and balances for 5 days. And then we want to double check and make sure everything's good. 6th day, 7th day, we pour.
Yeah. And I was going to give that kind of asterisk. I think the one thing we've changed over we used to pride ourselves on, we can get in and out of there in 3 days, like it was like name that tune, we were just trying to beat the other guy. And we can do that in 4 days. Well, we can do that in 3 days. It got to be a competition. I'm older and slower now. And I've also just learned that it's easier to catch problems and things like that. I mean, it's just from a stress level, I already have all my beard is gray already. I don't have any more gray to give, but a lot of this comes from trying to jam in stuff, and there's a pump truck coming in and we're still putting up scab boards and different things. So you can definitely make your life easier by giving yourself more time. If you have 2 weeks to give yourself, then it's way more fun.
Yeah.
We did that on a job this last summer where we were pressing and kind of got towards the end of the week. And I just made the call that we were canceling mud and we were going to push it a week.
We were fighting weather on that job.
Yeah,
like every day.
It was tough, and it was yeah, and we just knew we were going to be and I was just stressed out, and it was like I'm just gonna not do this. I don't have to. So we pushed it back, and it ended up being a really enjoyable job because we were literally by the last couple of days kind of lollygagging through the job a little bit, which just made it way less stressful. And we knew when those trucks pulled up, we'd actually been gone for a couple of days because we finished early and the mud couldn't get there till, Friday or whatever it was. I can't remember. And so we came in, the whole thing was just ready for us. All we had to do was stand there and wait for the pump. And that's a great feeling versus, being on the job where you're literally scrambling and the pump guys are like, come on, we got to go. You're lining up mud. You've got 2 or 3
it's a way better
ready
feeling.
mix trucks sitting there ready to pump, and you're ready to dump, and you're just like, God, that's stressful. Hurts my stomach thinking about it. So I definitely, like I said, rule of thumb for professional crews, usually about a week per floor. If you're looking at this and you want to not stress yourself out, or you're running a smaller crew or a newer crew,
or you have a
2
ton
weeks.
of openings and you have a ton of like there's the window lintels on one of our jobs this last year literally took a day and a half per floor just in window lentils. And I mean, it was a lot to make sure everything was in there because we were going up a whole other story. And so just give yourself some grace and give yourself some time. And it's better to be waiting on the pump truck and the concrete trucks than them waiting on you.
Yeah, it's a way better feeling when you get to leave the job for a day or two and go do other things and then come back and the job's ready to go, rather than that, like I said, that we've been on, we've got all kinds of nightmares over the years, but getting out there at 5 o'clock in the morning by the headlights of the truck, trying to finish because we had mud coming at 7 or whatever. Those are just not fun days. If you want to keep it fun, and it just, what it does, it takes a lot of the mistakes out. Rushing in anything you do usually causes the mistakes, and that's usually where the mistakes happen. Most of us don't work as well under pressure as we do if we're not pressured. So
and we had a contractor that we were consulting with a couple of years ago that he did delay his pour because they weren't quite ready, and we're like, okay, we went up, we had 16-foot tall walls on the first pour, and we're like, okay, now this alignment has to sit on here because we're going to be going up some more. So this alignment has to sit on here. Don't do anything on the job site. Don't have anybody here. And he was like, okay. Well, 2 days later, he's like, I'm behind schedule. I already had these guys scheduled. So he goes ahead and has them come in there and start, digging trenches around the whole job right up next to these 16-foot tall walls. Right. And then when we go to take our alignment out, we can't get to our alignment because there's trenches everywhere. And then he goes, well, my walls are a little bit crooked. Like, well, no shit. Like, you did exactly what we told you not to do. We said you need to leave this. You can't come in here and be vibrating the ground when the concrete's still, setting up.
I mean, and I think everyone who's been on a job site has been there when like the guys doing excavation next to your job site. You can feel it in the ground. Like the ground's vibrating. Like, I mean, you can feel it when a concrete truck drives by your job site. You can feel the ground move. I mean, it's think about that. So then if you're running you got a guy running in and trying to backfill against it before, it's too early. Like, I mean, you're just asking for trouble. So it's, and that's not on the ICF. That's not on the installer. That's not on anybody. That's on you and the excavator. So, that whole push, rush is, and
find
that
somewhere
falls
else
into
to
that.
make the time up.
You're going to make the time up later. Like, keep in mind, when you do ICF, you're eliminating a lot of trades. Like, I mean, one stack job, when we walk off there as a stacker, we've done your framing for you, we've done your insulating for you, we've done your Tyvek for you, we've done your sheathing for you. Like, all that's done. So those are all things that would come later. So don't be panicked about how fast you're going. You just by the fact that you used ICF, you just cut yourself a bunch of time on the project. So be happy with that. So, okay.
I got time for one more?
I think I got time for one more.
Okay.
This one could be controversial. This is the one that I go back and forth with people. And I mean, it's fun. I actually went back after this one. I went back to some posts because I wanted to read, and I apologize because I think a lot of the people that I interact with on these Facebook pages are listeners too. And I love you guys. This is literally just me talking about this stuff. And sometimes I just skip right over like these confrontations in the comments, but it was kind of funny because I read a few more people had commented kind of, I guess, that was taking my view of it. And this goes into termites and rodents.
Oh.
It's been something that's been brought up to me for 30 years, 20 plus years now. I have zero experience in ever seeing anything affected by termites and rodents. Now, I will give you this. I cover my most of my knowledge and ICF experience has been in the Western 11 states. So I do not handle the South or the Southeast. I'm not very, and I think that's where a lot of the termite thing happens.
There's been termites in our area.
I mean, they're here. I'm not saying they're not, but I have just, I'm not calling anyone a liar. I'm not saying that, if people get mad, like I'm like, and a few guys like me were on there, like, just show us some pictures. Like, I Googled it. There's no pictures. Like, there's no pictures of like termites in ICF or rodents in ICF. I had a guy that right here, in Idaho that I talked to that was like he was really wanting to do an ICF job, and his homeowner said that he'd heard from 5 different people that had ICF houses that the mice had got into their walls and just they had these huge infestation of mice in their walls. And I'm like,
so they must have had voids.
I'm like, no, like in the foam. Like chewed the foam out, made a nest in there, and basically lived in the 2.5 inches of foam. Basically it looked like racetracks of rodents. I hear this question all the time. I've never seen it. And this is probably going to get me a whole bunch of emails and pictures and things.
Well, you said you like starting fights, so here we go.
Yeah, here we go. The thing is I can just give you again, disclaimer, my opinion. I have not seen this. And I went back through some of the comments over the Facebook pages. Several other people said, can you post pictures? Can you post pictures? Can you post pictures? There was never a picture posted. I've never seen one. So,
and I'll say
Bigfoot
this.
and unicorns.
Yeah.
I just have not quite. I mean, I understand they're there. Just for some reason, nobody can provide any kind of photo evidence proof. The worst thing I've ever seen was some wild turkeys that came and pecked this crap out of the side of a house. For some reason, I think there were bugs crawling on the outside of the foam, and they were eating them, and they just pecked a whole corner of the house off.
Well, and I was going to say, like, we do a lot of remote jobs, and so we drop the block when we can. And then we are up there and we're working on them. And for a little while, when we were in between shops, in between places where we could store it, we had block set in an open lot, that had fields around it that were being developed. And there was mice running around over there. They were never in the block.
Yeah,
they were never
I've never seen a bite mark. I've never seen a scratch.
No, they were never in the car.
Anything.
Like when they ship it and it's got cardboard on top and bottom or whatever. There was never mice in there. The one thing that I found when we stored outside in the summer, the bees love to be in that foam. So we just started carrying.
Not in the foam.
Not in the foam, but they were
go into the cavity and they build nests on the webs. And so in an empty block, they don't go into the foam.
No.
I've never seen anything penetrate the foam.
No. So correct. Yeah. Not in the foam. But so we started carrying wasp spray, especially for some of our remote jobs, because in the middle of the summertime, you could be gone for a weekend and come back and there's bees that have started setting up shop.
Yeah. Or in the alignment system is another place they love.
They
really love getting there. But no, like I said, I'm not denying. I know that I'm sure there's plenty of occasions where termites are a thing. I know that people, I can tell you that enough that, we've, as an ICF industry, people have come up with ways to eliminate that and stop that. And I've heard of different ways. And the one that I've suggested to people that I've heard from people, if they are concerned about it, is just taking some deflashing, some galvanized deflash that you can get at any lumberyard, and just turning it at a perpendicular to the wall and kind of tapping it in, or cutting a line in the foam and pushing it in. But basically just causes a metal, break in the foam from the outside to the inside of the concrete, because they're never going to mess with the concrete. They're all worried about what they're going to do to the foam. So you can press that in there. Basically that way, if they get in below grade or something, they would come up and hit that metal and stop. From my understanding, talking to people that have said that they are aware of these issues, have said that they don't eat the foam. They just move it so they can live in it. Right. That's what they're saying. They're claiming. So some of the companies have said that I can't remember. I saw something on one of them that even maybe one of the companies put some sort of repellent in their foam. I'm not aware of that or anything, but I've seen that comment made. So I wanted to approach this because it has been asked multiple times. So I didn't want people to feel like I was ignoring this question. Like I said, I don't have knowledge of the areas that are really termite infested. We don't deal with it with wood homes here. It's not a big deal. We have beetles that get into the trees, but they don't get into the lumber of the house. So it's not really an issue. I joke, and I don't joke. I'm serious when I say this, but I always find that it's interesting that usually whoever sells the remediation of something is the person that knows of all these people that have a problem. So we kid about radon and different things like that. I've never, so far in my 50 years, I've never run into anyone that really did have an issue with radon other than people that sell radon remediation pumps. And so usually those people are really big advocates of radon pumps. So some of those things, and like I said, don't mean to offend anybody, not trying to,
but if you do have pictures,
if you do, send them. I'd love to see them. I mean, I've never stopped learning. I've always been, and my wife will tell you I get proven wrong all the time on a daily basis. So not opposed to being proven wrong, but this question did come up, and I just personally, in my opinion, we've never had an issue with this. It's never been, I don't give it a second of thought on any job or even selling to anywhere into Texas, into, that's Texas, California. And so that's my southern exposure, basically. Any of these places, I've never, ever, ever had any personal job affected by termites or rodents. Like I said, turkeys, yes. Rodents and termites, no. So,
well, and then we've got the whole waterproofing that's going to stop that any penetration.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and that's something that came up, and I did get that question regarding Hulk, not through the podcast, but through an actual Hulk distributor that said, they're really concerned about termites getting in, and it is actually been tested with, rodent or it's a, they can't get through. They could chew on the rubber, but they couldn't get through the quartz. So if you get through the fiberglass quartz infused, what they call their SRT material, then it stops them. They can't really get through it. So anyway, kind of interesting.
Yeah. So, okay. We are out of time now. So we've got more questions on the list, but we're out of time. So like we said, we're going to do this once a month. So we'll pick, and I don't know, this is going to air tomorrow. So we're recording a day before. And so we'll probably just stay on that schedule once a month. So if you have questions, please hit us up, DM us on all of our socials at Build with ICF. Send us an email, info@buildwithicf.
Give you just a little bit of an idea too. I mean, we do have, just going down the list, because if you do have questions and you're like, hey, they didn't answer my question, we've still got on the list concrete floor, pros and cons to slabs and heated slabs. 4-inch block is a question we're getting a lot of questions about. We're going to go over that. Composite blocks versus the standard EPS block that we see out there. You're starting to see some more of those composite type blocks out there. People asking a lot of questions about windows. What's too many windows? Is there such thing as too many windows? What is that? And then radiant heat versus HVAC forced air systems and stuff like that. Mini splits, things like that. So those are all questions I have written down. What I went through that have been asked to this point. So if any of those touch on your questions, they're coming. That'll be on the next episode. And then if you have any more
on the next Q&A episode,
the next Q&A, and then or listener questions, I guess we'll call it. I don't know. Let's come up with some cool.
We'll come up with some name.
Some cool name, but that's pretty much what we'll be going through. So apologize if we didn't get to your question today. We will get to it on a future episode. We continue to do this, continue to be super impressed by the interaction with our listeners. And obviously we knew we love this, this industry, and we love Insulated Concrete Forms. We didn't realize there were so many people that were as passionate about it as we are. So it's super cool. We've got a lot of good guests lined up. I think we've got 4 or 5 episodes we're recording next week with different block companies. We're going to be doing some interviews on pools. We got ICF pools coming up. We've got commercial buildings coming up. We're doing an interview with Randy Daniels with Fox for commercial buildings next week. We have a very heavily Fox block theme going, because I've got Alfonso from Fox Block. We're going to talk about training and education and stuff like that, because that's certifications. He's very much into that, doing some really cool stuff with trainings and stuff.
To our question number 1 that we started
the
podcast
with.
And
we will go back to that question with him, because he'll talk about that. We're going to we got Matt Knorr coming on with iSpan that's doing some concrete floor options for suspended concrete floors. So we've got some really good episodes coming up. We've reached out to been reached out by multiple different brands that are lining up to get their episode for different different block companies. So keep listening, keep letting us know what you're looking for. Share it with your friends. We love how big it is, but we want it to get bigger. We want everybody to know about this, about the Build with ICF podcast. If you got anybody that's curious about ICF, anybody that's wanting to get into it, whether it be as a business and a distributor, wanting to get into it as an installer, wanting to get into it as a homeowner that's just wanting to use it, or even if you've got a builder. We've had actually several homeowners that reach out to us and say, I want to use it, but my builder doesn't know anything about it. Forward this podcast over to your general contractor, your builder. A lot of times they can listen to it while they're driving around their truck, and they can get a little more educated about the product. So anything we can do to help, please let us know. Anything else you can think of?
I just want to say thank you to everybody, and keep sending us your questions and follow us on the socials.
All right, guys. We'll see you on the next episode. Thank you.